Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the first year academic experience panel. My name is Catherine Stegeman. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission here at Bowdoin. And we have a fabulous panel here for you this afternoon, and then we will return you to the sunshine up above ground. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. This panel is being live streamed for people who could not make it to campus today. So if you, when we move to the Q&A section of this panel, I will ask if you have a question to come down and use the microphone down here in the front. I know it's not a huge space, but for our folks watching at home, it would be great if you have a question for the panel again to come down here and use this microphone to ask your question after we get through all of our introductions. Does that sound good? Great, thank you. I'm gonna start by letting the panel introduce themselves. So we'll start at the far side.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for the mask. I'm coming off COVID, which is probably about as much fun as you think it is. So, but I wanted to be here anyway. My name is Rick Bruni, and I'm the chair of the chemistry department.
And my name is Catherine Burns. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the Baldwin Center, and I'm a lecturer in the education department.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angel Matos from Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies. I use he, they pronouns, and I specialize in youth cultures and youth studies.
Hi, I'm Karen Topp. I teach physics in the Physics and Astronomy department. I've been here for over 20 years. I also serve as the faculty liaison for advising, so I think about faculty advising in the beginning of the first year experience.
Hello, I'm Ann Kibbe. I'm in the English department, and I'm also, for 1 year, the director of the Cinema Studies program. I see some of you that I talked to a little earlier on.
Great, and then we'll go back and maybe do just a little bit of a longer introduction of your work here and your interaction with first year students.
Yeah, so welcome to all of you, and it's nice to see, I think many of you, some of you were in my class this morning, so it's nice to see you here again. So just so you know, I teach organic chemistry. So I take a little bit of a different approach to my advising. So I'm going to talk a little bit about advising and how I approach students in their first year and try to get them to go through the process successfully. So Bowdoin is not a complicated place once you know how to do Bowdoin. And so the way I figure it, you're coming in as first year students and you know sort of where you want to head. You know some classes you want to take, and you get signed up for those. And that's a very substantial portion of what you do when you first get to Bowdoin. But then right around the end of September, all of a sudden things start becoming due. And people start finding themselves either they don't have time to study, they have a roommate issue, one of their classes isn't really what they thought it was going to be. And so the way I approach my job as an advisor is my job is to figure out how to get you where you want to go and to find all those things that will help you get there. So for instance, Katie runs the Baldwin Center in Teaching and Learning. One of the things I do is I get my students over there to go do time management and talk to somebody about how to manage their time more effectively. Or maybe they're having trouble with a roommate, so I figure out how to get them either to talk to the person over in the dean's office or the student academic affairs or student affairs, office. If they're having mental health issues, I get them hooked up with the people over in the counseling service. Some of our students never have any of those issues. But the way I approach my advising is it's my job to make sure you get where you want to go and get all, let me take a step back. There are tremendous resources for support on this campus. The job of the advisor is to help the student find those things and get the ones that they want. You need a tutor? We'll find you a tutor. If you need somebody to help with whatever, there's somebody on campus who will help you do it, and it's my job to help you find those resources. And so it isn't my job to tell you what courses to take. That's up to you, right? I think you should all take organic chemistry, but that's just me. But it is my job to figure out if you do want to go to medical school, my job is to figure out how to get you the best application you can have while still having the experience you want to have in college. And so the way I approach it is, I'm just here to help. I've been here long enough to know where everything's hidden. And even though it probably isn't hidden, you just don't know where it is. By the time you major, you probably know the campus better than I do. So the pre-major advising is completely different than major advising. Majors just pretty much tell us what they want to do, but before that, the stuff is here, we just have to help you find it.
Yes, and I see Anya, who was in my Ed Psych class yesterday, so welcome. It's great to have all of you here. I'll build a little bit. I think we'll each sort of do that on what other people have said in sort of our area. You will be assigned a pre-major advisor for sort of your first 2 years until you declare a major the spring of your sophomore year, and you'll meet with that person as you choose classes and as you go through everything. I know our panel is the first year academic experience, which happens hand in hand with all of your other educational experiences in college, so you can't really separate them. And we often find that sort of when you're being challenged in one area, it's really hard to do things in another area, and so we help students try to figure out what's really going on here and what do you need. I think it's really important to say all of you have been successful, right? That's what got you here in this room today, and you've done very well in school. And I hope that you have an experience of failure at some point in college, and that may be a weird thing to say, and I think I can say this, after going to school for a long, long time, I failed my first test in college in astronomy, thank you, physics and astronomy. But it was such an eye-opening experience that I didn't know how to study, and now I lead a center on teaching and learning. So things come full circle, right? It's good to be challenged. And what we do at the Baldwin Center is really support all of the work that happens in classes. And so we both focus on faculty and how they can create really intentional, effective, inclusive classroom spaces. And we also work with students to say, what strategies work to get you here? And what do you need to change now that you're here? And so often for students, you get to college and what got you here isn't what you're gonna need to keep going. You're gonna need to learn some new innovative ways to think about studying and about learning. You're gonna need to spend time figuring out, what do I wanna do? How am I gonna make choices about classes, how I spend my time, other activities that are gonna be part of your educational experiences. So at the Baldwin Center, we have a bunch of different programs. So we have quantitative reasoning, we have writing and rhetoric, we have academic coaching and then peer mentoring, and we also have academic communication for multilingual speakers. We have both professional services, so people who are trained as a life academic coach that you can meet with regularly, or academic communication. We also have peer services. So we employ about 250 to 300 students every semester who work as writing assistants, as Q tutors, as mentors, and as learning assistants directly in classes. And so I say that because I also want all of you to imagine the possible jobs that you might have on campus and the ways that that also contributes to your education to do some of those things. I really think learning is hard if you're actually learning and doing those things, and that's okay. So I really want you, when you get here or wherever you choose to go, that you take and do some challenging things, and then you realize there are resources to help you get better and to reach your goals and what you want to do. And really, for so many students who have been so independent and done so well in high school, it can feel like a sign of weakness to ask for help, and it's actually a sign of wisdom to ask for help. And what we do at the Baldwin Center is we often say sometimes you're the one receiving that support, sometimes you're the one giving it, and hopefully you do both of those things. So people will be a writing assistant and go see a Q tutor, and vice versa. And so I think the also difference to realize about academics at Bowdoin is it's very collaborative and everyone can be successful. This is not a competitive environment, and we want everyone to figure out their path and what they need to help them move along on that path.
Hi, everyone. As I mentioned before, I'm housed in Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies, and I've also taught a significant amount of introductory courses and first-year seminars. So I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of first-year students and to get a sense of what they're usually worried about, what are big concerns they have when coming into the classroom. And so I'm going to share a couple of advice that my students themselves have shared and that they consider would be particularly useful for you in your first year. So the first thing I want you to remember is that you are in a liberal arts college. So this is really an opportunity to rethink how the learning process unfolds and what it means to grow holistically as a human being. I say this because you might come to Bowdoin with a very narrow and very specific idea about what you're interested in or what profession do you see yourself in. And sometimes some students come in with such a closed mentality that they do not open themselves to other areas of study, other areas of inquiry, inquiry that might challenge them to think and grow in different ways. So that's sort of the first piece of advice that I would like to give you here, even as you're thinking through your classes. Use this as an opportunity to expand yourself, to think about areas of inquiry and fields that you might not have the opportunity to think about. And also use this as an opportunity not only to grow in terms of your profession, but to grow personally as well. This is a huge and important aspect of the holistic liberal arts education that we hold dear on campus. Now, your first year seminar is actually a very ideal, safe space to kind of experiment with some of these new ideas. Now, something really special about Bowdoin College is that rather than taking sort of your dry, traditional writing class that just focuses on composition, you get to immerse yourself into a specific field of study while learning the art of argumentation and the art of writing as well. And the amount of courses that you could take in your first year seminar range from, and like we have a couple listed here, including Freedom Stories, The Real Life of Literature, Sex Work is Work, The Supreme Court and Social Change. So you get to explore the craft of writing, but through a very particular topic. And this really is an opportunity for you to find ways to expand yourselves in ways that you haven't really envisioned before. I could give you some example of some students that I've had in my first year seminar. Some of them come in thinking that they're gonna study microbiology or chemistry or physics, but they end up taking one of my courses on, for instance, queer video game studies, right? What happens when we approach a video game from a queer lens, and how can we use that content to push you how to write and how to create video games? And you will be surprised with how much people do acquire a lot about the art of argumentation and rhetoric by immersing themselves into a particular field of study. I've also offered other first-year seminars, such as young adult science fiction, for instance. And yes, you do get to develop sort of an expertise within a field, but the important thing is, regardless of what class you're taking or what area you're specializing in, you're acquiring skills that are going to be useful for all of your classes across Bowdoin. The one other thing that I'll say about first-year seminars that is incredibly important is that the first-year seminar is really your opportunity to socialize into college-level argumentation and college-level discussion. You're only going to be in a small class with 16 other voices, and what I want you to make sure is to let your voice shine, all right? If you don't understand something, raise your hand and express doubt. We professors love it when people express when they don't quite understand something or they need further explanation. And yes, you might think that everybody else is judging you, but you have to be accountable for your own learning and your own education. And part of that is just learning how to move beyond the embarrassment that we sometimes get in participating in classes and learning how to advocate for ourselves. On a final note, I will say it's also incredibly important to visit professors during office hours. I know that in high school, you typically don't always have that type of relationship with your teachers, but office hours are just really a wonderful opportunity for professors to meet you where you are at and to make sure that you're acquiring the skills and the knowledges that you need to succeed in whatever course you're taking at Bowdoin. So I'll leave you with that.
I'm Karen Topp again. I teach in the physics department. I also, as I mentioned, I have been involved for the last 5 years in working with the team who brings the first year class to Bowdoin. And so I have very eloquent colleagues, as you've heard, so I actually may focus a little bit on mechanics. For those of you who are worrying about like what happens in the summer after I say yes, you would log into you would get information about your Bowdoin email, and that becomes sort of the official way that we communicate with you, although I'm looking to admissions because we may be going to Instagram or something. I mean, I don't know. Look at how old I am, right? So
Open your email.
Open your email. So you will, we can tell if you've opened your email or not, by the way. So the information that comes via email is very important to help you get ready for your first few days here, and then, of course, for your first year, if going further also. The ones I want to point out are the placement tests. So not all fields have them, but we have noticed there's such a wide variety of backgrounds and experience in many fields coming in. And of course, I'm speaking about physics, but chemistry has one, languages have them, music has them. We really want you to start in the curriculum in the right place for you. So take placement tests, all of them that you have any experience with, and take them seriously. And I will just give you a little anecdote. We are in the middle of, or just finished, course registration for the fall for returning upper year students. Every year, I am scrambling to grade placement tests of sophomores, juniors, and seniors who did not take the physics placement test. And then they're like, oh, I want to take physics. Anyway, I throw you that little anecdote because I really encourage you to take the placement tests so that when you arrive, you will meet with your academic advisor, and I'll back up for a second and explain that process, and they will have the information that working with you and discussing with you will help you figure out where to best start. Let me back up for a second. One of the other pieces of email you will get is please fill out your advising survey. Is that what we call it? Advising survey. We've changed the name a few times. And that is just meant to be you communicating who you are to the person, the faculty member who will be your advisor. You put in it basically anything you're worried about. There's all sorts, we lead you through it. There's all sorts of prompts. And it gives us as your new faculty advisor a sense of who you are before you arrive and a sense of what you might be worried about to open discussions. But the thing that we will use to match you to an advisor will be a variety of things, mostly what your fields of academic interest are. So put a broad variety of things down there because we try to match everybody with some advisor who shares some academic interest, although that's not always entirely possible. I won't go into the details of that because yes, I could get into the weeds of that, but I won't. So once you have an advisor and you arrive on campus, you will work with them to discuss your goals, your hopes, and you will select courses with them. If you are thinking to yourself, why are we not doing courses over the summer? That is a big discussion point right now at Bowdoin. I'm not going to go into it, but there may eventually be summer registration of first-year students. But right now, if you are coming to Bowdoin this summer, this fall, you will look at the courses before you arrive. We will give you lots of information, but you are not registering for them until 2 days before classes start. So it's a little bit stressful, but you get lots of good information and lots of one-on-one discussion with your advisor. So the benefit is you are face-to-face with those of us who know the curriculum when you're selecting your courses.
Is the first year seminar, does that get registered for during the summer, or is that also in the first 2 days?
It's also in the first 2 days. We have gone through many models, and we're changing the model again. I'm happy to discuss any more sort of details of that, but I'll pass it on.
Thank you. A lot that my colleagues have said, and I just want to echo a few things. And one is what Rick said at the beginning, the idea of we as advisors, our goal is to get you where you want to go, that we are facilitating that. And I want to add, I think that is my main philosophy, but also, and where you want to go may change. And I think that's really important to keep in mind even in these first moments of imagining yourselves at Bowdoin. I've been here since 1989, so I'll let you do the math. But, and the one thing that I have learned over all of those years is that you will change. You may not change your entire life goal, but you will change in very real ways, each and every one of you. And your advisor can really help you understand that, guide you into new forms of following paths that you hadn't imagined before. But it's really just to feel, I think it's so important to feel flexible right from the beginning, to know, even if you have a clear idea of what your goal is, I want to go to medical school, I want to go to art school, I want to, that doesn't say everything about you, and it doesn't say everything about what you're going to learn here, about yourselves, as well as other aspects of what a curriculum is and what other fields are out there. So that be open. I know you're going to hear this over and over and over again, and the reason you're going to hear certain things over again is because they're true. So, so that the being willing to be open, that's the most important thing that I repeat to my advisees over and over. And just a small story from a week ago when I was advising my first-year advisee for now his sophomore fall, and he came in and he was so excited. He had taken a drawing class this semester for the first first time in his life. He had never taken a drawing class. And he sat down and he said, "Turns out I can draw." And he showed me on his phone the recent project he had done. And not only can he draw, but he can draw really stunningly. He never even knew that about himself. So, I mean, those are the moments we live for here, I think, that kind. But you'll all have some kind of moment of change and enlightenment about yourselves. And so I just want to really encourage you to be open to that. And then to echo what's already been said, but again, I think it can't be said enough, ask questions, ask questions. We always say, as professors, there are no stupid questions. That's really true, we mean it. If you have a question, it's an important question. And not just in class, but just about the way this place works, about the way the world after this place works. Just ask. I'm a first-gen student. I always use the first tense with that, the present tense with that, because I feel like I'm always a first-gen student for the rest of my life. And the one thing I think, it gave me a lot of strengths, but the one weakness it gave me, I felt I shouldn't ask questions. And that was so wrong, and I've spent the rest of my life trying to overcome that sense. You conceal what you don't know. No. So I just want to highlight, and your advisor is just a great first place for that. Ask all the questions.
Thank you, panel. That was really helpful. I do want to open it up to questions. Just a reminder, if you've joined us a little bit later, first of all, we're happy to have you. But we are live streaming this panel for those students and families who couldn't be with us today. So if you have a question for the panel, please come down and use the microphone on this side. A little bit awkward, but we're very friendly here. So just wiggle your way through the crowd. If anyone has any questions, please step up to the microphone. While you all are thinking of excellent questions, because I know you have them, because Professor Kibbe says you need to ask questions, I have a question for the panel. Some students may not be familiar with the term office hours and or what happens during office hours or what kinds of questions might get asked during office hours. Can one of you explain what office hours are, what they're used for, what kinds of questions you might get in that space?
Yeah, so first and foremost, office hours are time that your professors take away to meet with students on a one-on-one basis or sometimes in small groups to address any questions or concerns that you have about assignments, to take a look at assignments that you are in the process of developing. If you have any major questions about the course or about the field or even sometimes about life at college, we have that dedicated time to meet with students. Now, one thing to note is that professors at Bowdoin will approach office hours differently. You'll have some group of professors who will just be present at their office during designated times, and then you could drop in whenever you want to and chat with the professor. Other professors do like to arrange their office hours by appointments using an online app. So make sure that you know what method your professor prefers, and make sure to take advantage of this resource. I will say that sometimes some of the most genuine and authentic learning that takes place in my classes actually does take place during one-on-one discussions with the student. Again, because you're able to tailor the conversation to the questions that the student has directly and to their needs as well.
Let me just add on to this. I have heard from various students, including my own children who have now gone through college, that, they don't want to bother the professor. They're too busy. I don't want to bother the professor. We are here because we love talking to young people. We really like office hours. We like to have you discuss things with us. So I feel very disappointed if nobody comes into my office hours.
One more thing as well, it's also really important to foster relationships with your professors, because these are also going to be the people that vouch for you, especially after you leave Bowdoin, right? And so when you have a relationship with a professor, when you met with them during office hours, when the professor knows how to talk about your interest and your knowledge within the field, they'll be able to write better letters of recommendation for you. They'll be able to support you in more nuanced ways. So please do not disregard the importance of, one, developing these relationships with your professors, and two, taking advantage of office hours. I will echo what Karen said. We love to talk. We love to talk about our field, and we do welcome questions all the time.
Thanks. I was going to add, sort of take it a different way. I realized we didn't talk about some of the basics, like you take 4 classes a semester, like some of those things. So in your first semester here, all first years will take a first year writing seminar and then 3 other classes. So that's how it will work. And then we register for classes the semester before. So in November, you'll actually register for your spring semester, which is why our students here now are already registering for the fall. So I thought even some of those basics might be helpful to know. And many classes meet 2 days a week for 1 hour and 25 minutes. A bunch of other classes will meet 3 days a week for 55 minutes. Some of the languages meet every day, sort of across. There are labs, so the schedule gets organized very differently, and your time looks very different as a college student than most people have experienced as a high school student.
So I'd like to add in 2 things about that. So you may or may not know you need 32 classes to graduate from Bowdoin, right? That's the requirement, and you need a major. 2 things about that. There's typically 10 or 11 classes required for a major, which means most of your classes are not going to be taken in your major, right? Which is sort of a weird terminology, but that means 21 other courses are just sort of random. They're courses that, there's some distribution requirements, but you're going to be taking a lot of stuff that you may say, well, why would I want to take that? We're at a kind of place where we think you should want to take those kinds of courses. Frankly, it's the last time anybody's ever going to give you a guided tour into an area of thinking that you've never thought about before, right? After this, it gets really hard to do it. The other thing about office hours, I would just say that professors at Bowdoin are here because we want to be at Bowdoin. We didn't necessarily want to be at a big state university. Our doors are open, and we like talking to students. It's sort of the reason we're here. And people who don't like doing that tend not to stay around here very long, right? Because it's just, if you're annoyed by your job, why do it, right? And so you might as well do something you like. So those are the only 2 things I wanted to bring up. So you're not bothering us. Literally, it's our job, and we love our job.
In addition to office hours, there's also other opportunities to meet with professors and continue that thinking and the conversations that you're having. At Bowdoin, for instance, you could invite one of your professors to join you for a meal, be it breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and over a meal you could have a conversation about your project or about an issue within an area of study. And it's actually very common for students to invite us out for meals. As a matter of fact, I frequently get invited by students who aren't even in my classes, who are just interested in talking about literature or gender or video games, and so on and so forth. 2 other opportunities that usually come up later on at your career at Bowdoin but are worth thinking through at this point. During summers, you can work one-on-one with professors developing research projects focused on your areas of interest. And something else that you could do later on in your career is also take independent study courses where you'll work one-on-one with a professor focusing on an area of study that's not covered within the Bowdoin curriculum. So it's really an opportunity to sort of take a Bowdoin education and make it your own as well.
Again, inviting you forward for questions. Great, thank you.
Going back to basics, I caught that there was an academic advisor that you called a pre-major advisor. Could we go back to the basics and figure out what happens to the students in the summer, maybe when they get here, pre-major, post-major? Do you stay with the same advisor, something like that?
Excellent question, thank you. Sometimes when you are in the weeds and think about this too much, you assume wrongly that people are with you. So like I said, you as the student coming in would fill out some information, and using that information, there is a team that will assign as best we can, given the faculty and the fields of interest, 4 incoming students typically to 1 professor as their pre-major academic advisor. So if you, back into basics again, well, maybe somebody said this, you are here undeclared until February of your 2nd year, or somewhere in the middle of your 4th semester, at which point you declare a major. But up until then, you are considered a pre-major, at least in terms of advising. You have faculty, so the faculty are trained to be advisors and trained to, as Rick said, know where the resources are and know where to ask questions. So it doesn't need to be a person who's in a field you want to study. They can answer general questions, and they know who to talk to or who to send you to if you have specific questions about a field that that advisor may not be expert in. So, okay, so then you actually won't know who that advisor is until you arrive on campus. We have decided to do that to sort of cut down on the early emails we get from people who are worried. So you would see a lot of information about your classes. You would have some ideas of what you might want to take. But when you arrive on campus, heavens, I should know all the details of this. You do a few things in orientation that are more like your trip, your housing, you meet the people you're living with. But on the Sunday after you arrive here, there are open houses where faculty are available to talk through their programs, help out with placements. If there was a question about a language placement, then you speak the language with that faculty member and that sort of thing, math placement, music placement. That's the Sunday. The Monday, and when I say the Sunday and Monday, I'm talking about the few days before classes, which always start on a Wednesday. I don't know the date this year, but classes will start on a Wednesday. So the Monday before that, you meet in the morning with your pre-major advisor. You get a sense of the place, get a sense of what, like some of the stuff we've been talking about here gets discussed in a small group of the, say, 4 incoming students and the advisor. Then everybody goes out to the academic fair, almost exactly like what you just had between whatever, 10 and 11:30 today. Hopefully it's as glorious weather. So you can ask specific departments at that point, what's my best place to start in this major? Oh, and by that point you've taken, hopefully, your placement test. So there's a lot of questions at that academic fair on, oh, I was placed in physics 11:30, but I think da-da-da-da-da. And so that's where you get a discussion going with the appropriate faculty member. Then you make a 1-hour appointment, typically, one-on-one with your academic pre-major advisor, and you request courses. You have a whole discussion on, okay, let's decide what might you think is a major. That's probably a good place to have one course. You have to take a first-year writing seminar. Let's take something that's totally fun that you've never heard of before. And maybe you want to take a course that fulfills a distribution requirement. Don't do it if it's just checking off a box. Make sure it's something interesting to you. There's a lot of interesting things, but you want to think about fulfilling the degree requirements, and there are a few distribution gen ed requirements. So that discussion happens Monday. You find out if you get into those courses Tuesday, depending, and part of the discussion, I'm sorry if I'm talking too long. One of the bad things about being a professor, you talk too long, right? One of the things you find out Tuesday is whether you got into all of those 4 first choices or not. And your advisor hopefully is helping you strategize on which courses have more demand compared to the number of seats they have. You can see that live. On our course requesting software, you can see how many people have requested a certain number of available seats. And so you do the math. If there are only 3 people requesting where there's 10 spots, okay, you're in. If there are, I don't know, 50 in some courses, depending on, and your advisor can help you figure out which are the particularly well over demand.
30 slots.
Yes, thank you. 145 to 30 slots in some courses. This then becomes like your own risk tolerance. Like, oh, I really want that, so I'm going to try for it. It may be, likely that I don't get it, and then I have to have a backup plan. So then I would go into the second round of registration. Or you say, no, I'm not going to get into that. I want a more sure bet so that I'm into 4 classes after round 1. So there's various rounds of registration, which is, again, too much in the weeds. But often you get all 4 of your classes after round 1. If you don't, when we meet the next day, that's Tuesday, and we pick classes to fill out your schedule, and that's called round 2. And then if you still have not a complete schedule, the only time in your Bowdoin career that you will have the time pressure of, okay, hold on, let me back up a second. I know I piqued your interest here. Okay, the round 1 and round 2 advising are not first come, first serve. You enter your requests, and then the registrar's office at 5 p.m. or whenever the deadline is hits run, and they run their algorithm that puts everybody in according to preferences listed in the courses, but more or less randomly. I mean, in a fair way, right? So there's no first come, first serve. So that takes all the time pressure. It's a pretty busy day, but it takes the time pressure off of like when you have your appointment with your advisor, if you get what I mean. Okay. What I was then going to say is after round 2, which is also no time pressure, If you're still needing a course, then the only time that there is a time pressure, if you will, is the first year add drop. And it only happens in your first year because we start classes the next day. That evening, Tuesday evening, if you are not in 4 courses, and it's a stressful time, I'm always there. We talk you through it, and we order pizza and a few things like that. But there's a handful of students who don't have 4 courses, and it's like 7 o'clock the night before classes start, and they don't have 4 courses, and they're panicked. We help you through it. There's a whole bunch of faculty there. And that is at 7 o'clock, you start, go. And you just like, I see kids going, I got it. So that's when you fill up that schedule. I'm talking too much, I apologize. Then the next day classes start. That was a long answer for that.
And I was just going to add, and Karen said this really well, really you want to take 4 classes you're interested in. You do not need to check off boxes your first semester of college. You want to be interested in the courses, which will help you stay engaged and help you be successful. And then the other thing is there is this transfer moment that happens in spring of your sophomore year. You will now have advisors in whatever major you declared. So you have the same person for that first 2 years to get you through, and then you move to your major advisor.
Just want to circle back to Rick's first comment about the number of resources here to help you all navigate this. As I was sitting here, I was like flashing back to my own first year of college, being like, oh my gosh. But there are resources here. It's all very clear. It's walked through. There are people here to help you navigate course selection. So just wanted to say that.
The placement tests you guys were talking about for first year, when exactly do you take those? Do you take those online? Do we have to come here? Like, when exactly do we take those?
So the placement exams, I think, so once you say you're coming to vote, right, and you get the email, then you'll have access to, I'm not sure if it's a Canvas. It'll be, we just switched learning management system, so it's called Canvas. But they're an online exam that you take, and you can take any one that you want. So a typical student might do one in a language, might do one in chemistry or biology or physics, and then there might be some other ones that you take. Yeah, so I get a list of all the placement exams or the placements for all my students that come in. They're all online, and I don't think you see the results of them. I think you can come on campus later on. Once you're my advisor, we can figure out how you did on them, but I don't think you get a score back from them. They're done in the summer, and I think we want them done by the 1st of, I'm not gonna go there. There's a time when we would like them done. And I will tell you, I was doing placements yesterday for a junior rising senior who wanted to take a chemistry course, and they never took the exam 4 years ago. But try to take them during the summer before you get here. It just makes your life easier if you remember to do it. But your interests are going to change, and maybe you'll decide when you're a junior you want to take a chemistry class and never thought you were going to. So, but yeah, they come out. They'll be. Once you get your Bowdoin email, you'll have access to the page. You take whichever ones you want.
And no worries about like time. There's no time limits or anything like that. Or there's no supervision. Like it's just you when you have time in your own space.
Just want to reiterate, open your email. If the first year dean were here, she would say email is how we communicate with you. So starting in May is when we send out the first round of communication, which includes your Bowdoin email address, which is very exciting. You need to open it because that's how and where you get access to all of this information. Your roommate survey, very important. So I know for a lot of you, you might have had a separate email account for your college admission process. You're welcome to sunset that, but you really need to be opening your Bowdoin email. I know generationally, it's good to get into that practice, because we can see if you've opened them, and if you haven't opened them, we're gonna call you and say, why haven't you opened your email? So there are, while the placement tests are not necessarily time sensitive per se, there is other stuff that is time sensitive, like your orientation trip, your roommate survey, and so forth. So good to just, we're all gonna say it together, open your email. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah, great.
Question about add drop periods. Sounded like it only happens once in your career. speak to that, please. Or if you can sit into a class and listen and decide whether or not to take it. And then secondly, is there a junior year abroad programs readily available?
I'm sorry if I misspoke. What I meant was the first year, the so-called first year add drop that the night before classes start, that is only first year add drop. Every single registration period, there are 2 add drop periods. So, for example, right now, April, when students are registering for the fall, they've gone through round 1, they will go through round 2, then they will go through add drop 1, so at which point they can adjust their schedule by adding and or dropping courses. And then there's always 2 weeks of add drop at the beginning of every semester. So that, yes, if you end up in a class on the first day and this really doesn't seem right for you, you can drop and then add something else. Or you can sit in on another class that you didn't sign up for, and after talking to the professor. Add drop, you always have to have permission of the instructor to add, whereas in regular rounds of registration, you don't if you match the prerequisites. So yes, there's a lot of flexibility with add drop, thank you. And then
I can, yeah.
Yes, we have a very energetic and lively off-campus study program, wonderful office for guidance in that, and many, many students. And it's changed a lot over time. And I certainly noticed for a while the number of students studying away had dropped. And now it seems to be really accelerating again. But that is, we have many, many programs that Bowdoin recommends, and the Study Away office is always working with students to help them find the best programs. And majors, have different approaches to transferring credits, but if you want to study away, you can study away. You can make that happen.
It's about 55% of our junior class will spend a semester or a year away. And I will add student aid carries over to your off-campus study. And that's an important thing to know. We want everyone to have access to that opportunity to study off campus.
Great, thanks so much. So thanks for all the details, and I guess 32 is the magic number. Can students audit or do pass-fail an additional? Could they do 5 classes in a semester, and et cetera? Thank you.
The short answer is yes. Students are more than welcome. Students are more than welcome to take 5 credits. That's something that you will talk about with the advisor. Not in their first semester, yes. That is really important to note because there's, of course, an adjustment period that comes along. I believe students are able to take up to 4 classes pass-fail throughout their careers at Bowdoin. Again, that is a conversation that I will push all of you to have with your advisors. For some people, it makes more sense, especially when you have particularly heavy loads in a particular semester or taking a larger amount of classes for sure. But yes, to answer your question really quickly, you can take 5 classes after your first year. And yes, you can take some courses pass-fail up to 4 throughout your career at Bowdoin.
Let me just, if you're a musician, let me just say, it's very common to take 4 full credit academic courses and then a half credit ensemble, chorus, orchestra, band, Middle East ensemble, or lesson. You can actually get half credit for music lessons, and financial aid will support that also. The 4 versus 5 credit thing is we actually put a hard stop on very first semester not taking 5 full credits just because people don't quite know what a college level course is versus a high school level course. After that, if you have shown that you're fine with college level work, with a discussion with your advisor, yes, you can certainly take more. And actually it's not pass fail, we have a credit DF policy. It's actually meant to encourage exploration. Like if you think you really are interested in something, but oh my gosh, I don't know anything about it, or I don't think I'd be very good at it, but I'm really interested, it's meant to encourage exploration. I mean, students certainly do use it, and we talk as advisors about using it if you have a particularly heavy load in your other courses, but it's really meant to just encourage exploration. But you can't use it for the distribution requirements. That's one thing to remember.
We've brought up the distribution requirements a couple of times. Can anybody enumerate what those are for our audience?
5 distribution requirements and then 3 division requirements, and often a course will fill one of each. So the 3 divisions that you will take courses in are the natural sciences and math, the social sciences, and the humanities. So you have to have 3 courses that fit in those. The distribution requirements are a way, sort of going back to this different way of thinking about the world. So there's and we use acronyms, everyone does, but it's mathematical and computational and scientific reasoning, right? MCSR, statistical reasoning, MCSR. There's an inquiry of the natural sciences, so INS. There's an international perspectives, which is IP. There's a difference, power, and inequity, which is DPI, and then there's a visual and performing arts, VPA. So you take one course in each of those areas. And the goal is that you finish all of those by the end of your sophomore year. So in your first 4 semesters, you have taken courses that sort of meet those criteria.
I could just add to that to echo what Katie said, that the courses, you're going to see those letters after most courses in the catalog. And so you don't really have to go, much of the time you don't have to go out of your way to be fulfilling these requirements. It really does happen on its own. You're taking courses and they happen to fulfill one of those requirements. So it's not as if that's 8 courses eaten up. Those are going to be 8 courses that you're just taking. I'm sorry, not 8. Yes.
5
However, yes. Sorry. English department.
Any lingering questions for our panel? Great. Well, panel, thank you so much. And thank you all for coming. If you need directions pointing you to next events, please find one of us in admissions. I will say the tent out front of this building, this is important, not as important as opening your email, but Gelato Fiasco will be out front. So I highly recommend. I'm not in the payroll, but I should be. But please enjoy the rest of your afternoon here. Thank you for coming.